Thank you, Madam Master of Ceremonies. Maestro or not, I don't know. But I'm definitely a person who you could call an optimist. And what do I say and why do I say I'm an optimist? You know why? Because look at the front row of my bag and you'll always find a comb over there. Now you can understand what that means. I'm giving a topic. I was not scheduled to speak today, so I'm giving a topic, I'm giving a speech from the top of my head, literally. Well, for all those who still not caught on, this runs in the family. My father has a full moon, my uncle has a waning moon, and I, as you can all see, and if you can't see now, you can see, am on the rising moon trajectory. But having been there for so long and having gone through the various stages, I can tell you MPB or Male Pattern Baldness, as it's officially called, is not an overnight affair. It takes a long time. And today, I'm going to tell you how it moves ahead. So that today when I actually go to the barber and say, can I have a haircut? He looks at me and says, sure, which one? Well, getting bald requires 5 steps. The first step is the stage of denial. Now that is a time when you notice hair around you, but always attributed to someone else. You get up on your pillow, you see hair, and you say, it can't be mine. On the dressing table, you see, nobody else can say it's not your hair, but you will deny that it's your hair. Conversations in parties veer around to, oh my dear, you're losing hair, you must be getting rich, huh? Or, oh my dear, your wife must be troubling you, you're losing hair. And you say, who, me, lose hair? Well, you believe that nobody loses hair except if you think about it. And some people go through that stage for their whole life. But for some others, we actually move to the reality, which is stage 2, which is shock. The stage when you actually look into the mirror and you say, hey, it looks like I have a hole in my haircut. Or you actually go into the Ekta Kapoor mode and say, nahi, ye nahi ho sakta. Nahi, this cannot be happening to me. When you actually realize that you are losing hair. And that moment, all kind of images come front in your mind. You start thinking how you would look with an absolute bald plate. You start thinking how taking a shower would actually become a brainwash. You start thinking about how people would be giggling behind your back and talking about you. And at that moment, you plunge into what is stage 3. And that is try and stop it. Prevention. At this stage, you're trying to do everything possible to avoid the inevitable. It starts with the usual remedies of hair scalp experts, trichologists, homemade remedies, everybody. In fact, I had a friend of mine who once advised me, Abdul, why don't you shave your entire head and cover it one full day with cow dung? I was ready to do that. But I asked him, that will doing that bring back my hair? He says, with cow dung on your head, who's going to talk about the hair? Similarly, I went to so many trichologists, including Richfield. But after paying a hefty amount for all that potions, I thought they were the ones who felt rich. Then after that, you move into the 4th stage. After trying all the tools around, you find nothing succeeds and you go into the 4th stage, which is called concealment. Now this is the stage where you find the way people actually comb their hair from the back to the front, taking specially endowed areas to cover the lesser endowed ones. So you have what is called cross parting, what is called back to forward parting, and so many other ways to try and avoid and show what has actually happened under the ground. And at that point, in spite of that losing battle with baldness, you try and you try and you try and you finally discover that there are 3 hairstyles that men have: parted, unparted and departed. And then you move into finally the 5th stage. 5th stage of acceptance, of nirvana, where you actually learn to live with the inevitable. You look at that face in the mirror and you say, hey, I'm actually looking smart. Baldness is a sign of smartness. Remember, cavemen, they were not bald. As man evolves, he gets bald. Or you start looking at it other ways and you say, well, have not the most successful people in this world been bald? Can you think of a few? Winston Churchill. Can we have more names coming up? Mahatma Gandhi, whom you can see on every currency note around you. Just to remind that one of the most successful people in India and who you can see on every note was just that. William Shakespeare, for that matter. William Shakespeare, in fact, in Comedy of Errors, writes about himself perhaps, that what God hath scanted in hair to man, he hath given in wit. So people who are not having hair are actually more witty. Andre Agassi, Bruce Willis, Dalai Lama. Most of the people in this world who are actually very successful have been bald. And at that point, if somebody looks at you and says, hey, you have a nice face, you look back, you touch your head and you say, yes, God is very kind to me. He gave me a good face and space for another one too. So at that point, you actually start accepting the inevitable and living with it. And now think back, any problem that we face in life, don't we go through these 5 stages as well over there? Starting with a denial, to a shock, to a prevention, to a concealment, and finally to acceptance. So be it with baldness. But I must relate to you the incident when my sister came over with her 5-year-old nephew and niece. We were sitting on one lazy Sunday afternoon and just lazing around when her 5-year-old niece, the nephew, came up to me, looked at me very intently, looked at my father with his full bald crown, looked at his mother and says, Ma, did God make uncle? She said, yes, of course he did. He then looked at my father once again and his bald head and he said, Ma, did God make grandpa? She said, yes, of course he did. He then ran to the mirror, touched his thick, luscious hair and looked at the mirror, smiled and turned to God and said, don't you think God is getting better? So that's all for now. That's how we actually learn to live with what we call as MPB and take on the rising boom head on, literally. I'm a Toastmaster.